In 1987, when my younger daughter, I have two daughters, was 1 year old and she had just begun walking. Unfortunately, she grabbed a small glass vial of medicine lying on a low-lying table, and she fell while carrying it. And a small sliver of glass from that vial, that broken vial, cut one of her fingers and severed a tendon. We were advised to rush her to London to an expert microsurgeon. We did so, and after he had repaired it, her hand was placed in a cast to allow healing for a month. After a month of waiting with anxiety in London, when the cast was removed, we were horrified, and so was the surgeon to find that the finger still would not bend, and the surgery had been unsuccessful. So we were then advised to go to Paris to meet another microsurgeon called Dr. Glishenstein. And when we entered his clinic, he examined her, looked at us, and said, "Why haven't you consulted Dr. Joshi?" And I said, "I'm sorry, excuse me, who's that?" And he said he's one of the finest hand surgeons in the world. He's Indian, and he has much more experience than all of us, sadly because of the number of people who suffer hand injuries in your country. He then gave me Dr. Joshi's address. It was in Worli, Mumbai, barely 10 minutes away from my office. We returned to India, consulted Dr. Joshi. The very next day, he took my daughter once again into surgery, and he explained to me that the key was not the microsurgery procedure itself. It was the recovery process that was complex. Because the very same scar tissue that helps to heal a tendon potentially blocks the flexibility and free movement of the finger. So the trick lay in retaining the flexibility of the finger even while the scar tissue was forming. And the simplicity of the solution that he deployed, frankly, was breathtaking. After the surgery, he stitched into my daughter's tiny fingernail a simple metal eye hook of the kind you'll find in a blouse. He then wrapped a bandage around the same wrist, and into that bandage he sewed another eye hook placed in the opposing position to the first one. He then merely attached an ordinary elastic band. He strapped it between those two hooks. They were anchored to the two hooks. And that simple device, during healing, allowed some movement of the finger, but not enough that it would prevent healing by the scar tissue. Total cost of that device, 2 rupees. Miraculously, it worked. A decade later, my daughter was playing the piano with the same hand and the same finger. I have told and retold this story because it taught me one powerful lesson. Always look for solutions in your own backyard before you think the best solution lies overseas. And how did this affect me and my career? Well, I'm certain that after that, when it came to making big decisions and big bets in business that were based on homegrown technology, I never again lacked the courage to do so. For example, many people have asked me how come I made such an enormous bet at risk to my career by pushing for the indigenous development of the Scorpio SUV in the late 1990s when we started. Why did I make that bet despite the cost that we were going to incur being higher than any capex the company had spent until then, despite our never having designed or built a vehicle by ourselves until then? Well, I'll tell you, I know that the humble Dr. Joshi had something to do with my willingness to make that bet, because my mindset had changed.